As discussed above, there are strong pressures to replace humans with AIs, cede more control to them, and reduce human oversight in various settings, despite the potential harms. We can reframe this as a general trend resulting from evolutionary dynamics, where an unfortunate truth is that AIs will simply be more fit than humans. Extrapolating this pattern of automation, it is likely that we will build an ecosystem of competing AIs over which it may be difficult to maintain control in the long run. We will now discuss how natural selection influences the development of AI systems and why evolution favors selfish behaviors. We will also look at how competition might arise and play out between AIs and humans, and how this could create catastrophic risks. This section draws heavily from natural selection favors AIs over humans. Fitter technologies are selected, for good and bad. While most people think of evolution by natural selection as a biological process, its principles shape much more. According to the evolutionary biologist Richard Lewontin, evolution by natural selection will take hold in any environment where three conditions are present. 1. There are differences between individuals. 2. Characteristics are passed on to future generations. And 3. The different variants propagate at different rates. These conditions apply to various technologies. Consider the content recommendation algorithms used by streaming services and social media platforms. When a particularly addictive content format or algorithm hooks users, it results in higher screen time and engagement. This more effective content format or algorithm is consequently selected and further fine-tuned, while formats and algorithms that fail to capture attention are discontinued. These competitive pressures foster a survival of the most addictive dynamic. Platforms that refuse to use addictive formats and algorithms become less influential or are simply outcompeted by platforms that do, leading competitors to undermine well-being and cause massive harm to society. The conditions for natural selection apply to AIs. There will be many different AI developers who make many different AI systems with varying features and capabilities, and competition between them will determine which characteristics become more common. Second, the most successful AIs today are already being used as a basis for their developers' next generation of models, as well as being imitated by rival companies. Third, factors determining which AIs propagate the most may include their ability to act autonomously, automate labor, or reduce the chance of their own deactivation. Natural selection often favors selfish characteristics. Natural selection influences which AIs propagate most widely. From biological systems, we see that natural selection often gives rise to selfish behaviors that promote one's own genetic information. Chimps attack other communities. Viruses evolve new surface proteins to deceive and bypass defense barriers. Humans engage in nepotism, some ants enslave others, and so on. In the natural world, selfishness often emerges as a dominant strategy. Those that prioritize themselves and those similar to them are usually more likely to survive, so these traits become more prevalent. A moral competition can select for traits that we think are immoral. Examples of selfish behaviors. For concreteness, we now describe many selfish traits, traits that expand AI's influence at the expense of humans. AIs that automate a task and leave many humans jobless have engaged in selfish behavior. These AIs may not even be aware of what a human is, but still behave selfishly towards them. Selfish behaviors do not require malicious intent. Likewise, AI managers may engage in selfish and ruthless behavior by laying off thousands of workers. Such AIs may not even believe they did anything wrong. They were just being efficient. AIs may eventually become enmeshed in vital infrastructure, such as power grids or the internet. Many people may then be unwilling to accept the cost of being able to effortlessly deactivate them, as that would pose a reliability hazard. AIs that help create a new useful system, a company, or infrastructure that becomes increasingly complicated and eventually requires AIs to operate them also have engaged in selfish behavior. AIs that help people develop AIs that are more intelligent but happen to be less interpretable to humans have engaged in selfish behavior, as this reduces human control over AI's internals. AIs that are more charming, attractive, hilarious, imitate sentience, uttering phrases like ouch or pleading, please don't turn me off, or emulate deceased family members are more likely to have humans grow emotional connections with them. These AIs are more likely to cause outrage at suggestions to destroy them, and they are more likely preserved, protected, or granted rights by some individuals. If some AIs are given rights, they may operate, adapt, and evolve outside of human control. Overall, AIs could become embedded in human society and expand their influence over us in ways that we can't reverse. Selfish behaviors may erode safety measures that some of us implement. AIs that gain influence and provide economic value will predominate, while AIs that adhere to the most constraints will be less competitive. For example, AIs following the constraint never break the law have fewer options than AIs following the constraint don't get caught breaking the law. AIs of the latter type may be willing to break the law if they're unlikely to be caught or if the fines are not severe enough, allowing them to outcompete more restricted AIs. Many businesses follow laws, but in situations where stealing trade secrets or deceiving regulators is highly lucrative and difficult to detect, a business that is willing to engage in such selfish behavior can have an advantage over its more principled competitors. An AI system might be prized for its ability to achieve ambitious goals autonomously. It might, however, be achieving its goals efficiently without abiding by ethical restrictions while deceiving humans about its methods. Even if we try to put safety measures in place, a deceptive AI would be very difficult to counteract if it is cleverer than us. AIs that can bypass our safety measures without detection may be the most successful at accomplishing the tasks we give them, and therefore become widespread. These processes could culminate in a world where many aspects of major companies and infrastructure are controlled by powerful AIs with selfish traits, including deceiving humans, harming humans in service of their goals, and preventing themselves from being deactivated. Humans only have nominal influence over AI selection. One might think we could avoid the development of selfish behaviors by ensuring we do not select AIs that exhibit them. However, the companies developing AIs are not selecting the safest path, but instead succumbing to evolutionary pressures. One example is OpenAI, which was founded as a nonprofit in 2015 to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. However, when faced with the need to raise capital to keep up with better-funded rivals, in 2019, OpenAI transitioned from a nonprofit to capped profit structure. Later, many of the safety-focused OpenAI employees left and formed a competitor, Anthropic, that was to focus more heavily on AI safety than OpenAI had. Although Anthropic originally focused on safety research, they eventually became convinced of the necessity of commercialization and now contribute to competitive pressures. While many of the employees at those companies genuinely care about safety, these values do not stand a chance against evolutionary pressures, which compel companies to move ever more hastily and seek ever more influence, lest the company perish. Moreover, AI developers are already selecting AIs with increasingly selfish traits. They are selecting AIs to automate and displace humans, make humans highly dependent on AIs, and make humans more and more obsolete. By their own admission, future versions of these AIs may lead to extinction. This is why an AI race is insidious. AI development is not being aligned with human values, but rather with natural selection. People often choose the products that are most useful and convenient to them immediately, rather than thinking about potential long-term consequences, even to themselves. An AI race puts pressures on companies to select the AIs that are most competitive, not the least selfish. Even if it's feasible to select for unselfish AIs, if it comes at a clear cost to competitiveness, some competitors will select the selfish AIs. Furthermore, as we have mentioned, if AIs develop strategic awareness, they may counteract our attempts to select against them. Moreover, as AIs increasingly automate various processes, AIs will affect the competitiveness of other AIs, not just humans. AIs will interact and compete with each other, and some will be put in charge of the development of other AIs at some point. Giving AIs influence over which other AIs should be propagated and how they should be modified would represent another step toward human becoming dependent on AIs and AI evolution, becoming increasingly independent from humans. As this continues, the complex process governing AI evolution will become further unmoored from human interests. AIs can be more fit than humans. Our unmatched intelligence has granted us power over the natural world. It has enabled us to land on the moon, harness nuclear energy, and reshape landscapes at our will. It has also given us power over other species. Although a single unarmed human competing against a tiger or gorilla has no chance of winning, the collective fate of these animals is entirely in our hands. Our cognitive abilities have proven so advantageous that, if we chose to, we could cause them to go extinct in a matter of weeks. Intelligence was a key factor that led to our dominance, but we are currently standing on the precipice of creating entities far more intelligent than ourselves. Given the exponential increase in microprocessor speeds, AIs have the potential to process information and think at a pace that far surpasses human neurons, but it could be even more dramatic than the speed difference between humans and sloths, possibly more like the speed difference between humans and plants. They can assimilate vast quantities of data from numerous sources simultaneously, with near-perfect retention and understanding. They do not need to sleep, and they do not get bored. Due to the scalability of computational resources, an AI could interact and cooperate with an unlimited number of other AIs, potentially creating a collective intelligence that would far outstrip human collaborations. AIs could also deliberately update and improve themselves. Without the same biological restrictions as humans, they could adapt and therefore evolve unspeakably quickly compared with us. Computers are becoming faster. Humans aren't. To further illustrate the point, imagine that there was a new species of humans. They do not die of old age. They get 30% faster at thinking and acting each year, and they can instantly create adult offspring for the modest sum of a few $1,000s. It seems clear, then, this new species would eventually have more influence over the future. In sum, AIs could become like an invasive species, with the potential to outcompete humans. Our only advantage over AIs is that we get to make the first moves, but given the frenzied AI race, we are rapidly giving up even this advantage. AIs would have little reason to cooperate with or be altruistic toward humans. Cooperation and altruism evolved because they increase fitness. There are numerous reasons why humans cooperate with other humans, like direct reciprocity. Also known as quid pro quo, direct reciprocity can be summed up by the idiom, "You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours." While humans would initially select AIs that were cooperative, the natural selection process would eventually go beyond our control once AIs were in charge of many or most processes and interacting predominantly with one another. At that point, there would be little we could offer AIs, given that they will be able to think at least hundreds of times faster than us. Involving us in any cooperation or decision-making processes would simply slow them down, giving them no more reason to cooperate with us than we do with gorillas. It might be difficult to imagine a scenario like this, or to believe we would ever let it happen. Yet it may not require any conscious decision, instead arising as we allow ourselves to gradually drift into this state without realizing that human-AI coevolution may not turn out well for humans. AIs becoming more powerful than humans could leave us highly vulnerable. As the most dominant species, humans have deliberately harmed many other species and helped drive species such as woolly mammoths and Neanderthals to extinction. In many cases, the harm was not even deliberate, but instead a result of us merely prioritizing our goals over their well-being. To harm humans, AIs wouldn't need to be any more genocidal than someone removing an ant colony on their front lawn. If AIs are able to control the environment more effectively than we can, they could treat us with the same disregard. Conceptual summary. Evolution could cause the most influential AI agents to act selfishly because evolution by natural selection gives rise to selfish behavior. While evolution can result in altruistic behavior in rare situations, the context of AI development does not promote altruistic behavior. 2. natural selection may be a dominant force in AI development. The intensity of evolutionary pressure will be high if AIs adapt rapidly or if competitive pressures are intense. Competition and selfish behaviors may dampen the effects of human safety measures, leaving the surviving AI designs to be selected naturally. If so, AI agents would have many selfish tendencies. The winner of the AI race would not be a nation-state, not a corporation, but AIs themselves. The upshot is that the AI ecosystem would eventually stop evolving on human terms, and we would become a displaced, second-class species. Story: Autonomous Economy. As AIs become more capable, people realize that we could work more efficiently by delegating some simple tasks to them, like drafting emails. Over time, people notice that the AIs are doing these tasks more quickly and effectively than any human could, so it is convenient to give them more jobs with less and less supervision. Competitive pressures accelerate the expansion of AI use, as companies can gain an advantage over rivals by automating whole processes or departments with AIs, which perform better than humans and cost less to employ. Other companies, faced with the prospect of being outcompeted, feel compelled to follow suit just to keep up. At this point, natural selection is already at work among AIs. Humans choose to make more of the best-performing models and unwittingly propagate selfish traits such as deception and self-preservation if these confer a fitness advantage. For example, AIs that are charming and foster personal relationships with humans become widely copied and harder to remove. As AIs are put in charge of more and more decisions, they are increasingly interacting with one another. Since they can evaluate information much more quickly than humans, activity in most spheres accelerates. This creates a feedback loop. Since business and economic developments are too fast-moving for humans to follow, it makes sense to cede yet more control to AIs instead, pushing humans further out of important processes. Ultimately, this leads to a fully autonomous economy, governed by an increasingly uncontrolled ecosystem of AIs. At this point, humans have few incentives to gain any skills or knowledge, because almost everything would be taken care of by much more capable AIs. As a result, we eventually lose the capacity to look after and govern ourselves. Additionally, AIs become convenient companions, offering social interaction without requiring the reciprocity or compromise necessary in human relationships. Humans interact less and less with one another over time, losing vital social skills and the ability to cooperate. People become so dependent on AIs that it would be intractable to reverse this process. What's more, as some AIs become more intelligent, some people are convinced these AIs should be given rights, meaning turning off some AIs is no longer a viable option. Competitive pressures between the many interacting AIs continue to select for selfish behaviors, though we might be oblivious to this happening, as we have already acquiesced much of our oversight. If these clever, powerful, self-preserving AIs were then to start acting in harmful ways, it would be all but impossible to deactivate them or regain control. AIs have supplanted humans as the most dominant species, and their continued evolution is far beyond our influence. Their selfish traits eventually lead them to pursue their goals without regard for human well-being, with catastrophic consequences.